So I have you talking today about creating engaging virtual learning opportunities for students and families, which we're excited to hear about. I think we have other regions of the country attending right now to hear you, not just these 3 states. So do you need to share screen? I'm going to stop my share. So
yes,
you can
I will share my screen and jump over there.
Okay, good. And we see you on video. And as soon as I see you share screen, I'll let you know that everyone's seeing it, and then I'm going to mute myself. Yep, we see it now.
Okay, perfect. Well, I would just like to start by...
All right, so over...
Oh, okay. I would just like to start by saying thank you for this opportunity today. I enjoyed when we were actually able to be in person last year, so I'm excited to be here again virtually with all of you. So I'm Sherawn Reberry, and I'm the principal for the Virtual Schoolhouse. I also have my assistant principal, Rachel Edwards, with me, but we are social distancing in the same room. So if there's questions and she has some answers, I'll make sure that you can hear her as well. So as we get started, I just wanted to mention that Virtual Schoolhouse was brand new to the West Ada School District this year. We put this school together in about 5 weeks. I was hired in July, mid-July, and Rachel was hired at the beginning of August. And we started school right after Labor Day. So with that, we want to tell you a little bit about Virtual Schoolhouse. So as we talk today, I'm going to talk through our why, habits, structure, and values. So as we have entered further into the world of virtual learning this year, it's important for us to know what the research says. So we're going to start with our why. Our why describes through research the importance of teacher impact on student learning and family engagement. Research from 2010 informs us that students have improved outcomes when there is an intentional and a systematic partnership between educators and families. And we know that there are improved outcomes in academics, social emotional skills, etc., when those relationships occur. The actions of our teachers are really important. We know that with stronger ties with teachers, there are higher levels of student achievement. At Virtual Schoolhouse, we really try to take the asset approach. I wish I could claim that term, but it did come from some research that I found. But we know that our parents, just as the parents in all school districts across the nation, are sending us their very best. And they are entrusting their very best with us. So which means that we need to focus on strengths, not only from the teacher side, but on our student side, and we need to continually seek to learn. We do have supports in place for our students, and these 2 graphics explain our MTSS or RTI process that we have in place at the Virtual Schoolhouse. As the school year began, we purchased for our teachers the distance learning playbook, and it was an invaluable resource. So we really studied that, and we continued to rely on the information in that book. And so this information here came from there. Again, it's all about relationships, because we know that relationships take work. It's a continual growing and learning, and we have to work to ensure that our teachers and the rest of our staff are always being intentional, not only in their planning, but also in getting to know their students and their families. Because being virtual, it just adds a different layer of how we need to do that and why we need to do that. And we do get reminded every day that our families chose Virtual Schoolhouse for a reason. Some chose because of COVID, but many other reasons exist why students are here. So that's why we continue to build and grow all of these relationships. And so this is one example of how one of our teachers gained some information and insight into her students at the beginning of the year. This was for the parents to complete, but she also had something similar for the students for an interest inventory. We do look at engagement as more than just seeing a student on screen. We have to ensure that students are engaged in a well rounded way, starting with the behavioral, moving to cognitive, all the way to the emotional side. So when this occurs, the learning then moves from just being a participant to students actually driving their own learning. So this also means that relationships are also built with the families through this. Virtual Schoolhouse, we do help to drive the learning by informing parents through different means. So we created what we call a parent university. We actually have done 3 live events for Parent University. We've done one for elementary, and we've actually done 2 for secondary, and we'll do 1 more for elementary here next week or the week after. But essentially what the Parent University does, it's a live event. We archive it, and when it's done, we post it on our website so parents can review it. But it essentially shows parents our systems, how to navigate, what system does what, how to check in on student work, and also how to communicate with teachers, with counselors, with the administrators, etc. We have also learned a little bit into the start of the school year that we needed to do a new student welcome and a new student orientation. So we have built these student orientations, and we have one for elementary, we have one for secondary as well. And so what this does is essentially welcome students, it welcomes the parents, and it just gives a high-level overview of Virtual Schoolhouse and some of the tools that we have. We also send out a parent newsletter weekly. So we find that is really important to keep connected with that. We also send out a staff newsletter weekly, and the two are always, the parent newsletter is always connected for the staff to view as well. The second area that we're going to look at is habits. It's really important to develop habits, especially for our students that are working in this online environment. There's a science of how our brain creates habits for ease and efficiency. Once the brain solves a problem successfully, it remembers the solution and then it becomes automatic. It works the same for both good and bad habits. And we all know that it takes at least 32 times to learn something for it to become a habit. So it's kind of like the analogy of the first time you drive through a field. It can be really bumpy, but you don't know where you're going. But once you realize and you're successful in getting through it, that success feels good. And then it's easier to repeat the action. So then you go the same way all the time. So today we're talking about 5 different habits here. So the first habit we are going to look at is habit about logging in every day, and consistency is the key. It is really important to provide our students with strategies and suggestions, knowing that eventually they will develop their own. But for now, we help students as they begin and continue learning with us some strategies to do that. We do also provide pacing guides and a schedule for the week so that students know where they are going and what they will be doing each day. We do also ask our teachers to set up the environment the same. So if you are a 5th grade teacher, or you teach PE, or you teach science, or kindergarten, everything is set up the same way, because for families that have more than one student with us, it's really important for them to be able to log in the same way and not have to remember for 3 or 4 different classes. So here's a sample from a 3rd grade classroom. Our 3rd grade team sends this out on Fridays, and there's one for each day of the next week. And it essentially helps students track their progress. It gives them a peek at what they're going to do the next week. And then there's goal reminders and even lists like supplies that they'll need for the week. The second habit we're going to talk about is developing habits to access and complete the online work. Students tend to just go click right to the assignment. So we need to model for them how they should work their way through the page. It doesn't matter what content we've given them. We need to urge them to read the picture captions, look at the titles, click on the links, how to watch the videos, the assignments, where to submit, etc. So here's an example from a couple of our secondary teacher classrooms. This is all about pacing your week, even reminders about upcoming field trip, a virtual field trip that took place, and then also note-taking strategies. So how do you go about doing work online and learning online, whether it's the teachers lecturing or you're looking at PowerPoints or videos that are embedded for you. We emphasize the importance of students advocating for themselves, but also parents being able to advocate for their students. So we emphasize the importance of students or parents emailing teachers with questions, with thoughts, and then encourage students, especially if something doesn't feel like it's working for them, to reach out to the teacher. That doesn't matter if they don't understand something or if it's a video isn't working, just any other barriers that could be there. So we help students then with alternative suggestions, and then we teach them how to begin solving problems on their own as well. So we ask them, where else can you find solutions? It's really that advocating for self. And so all of our teachers, again, whether it's kindergarten or middle school or high school, they all hold office hours throughout every day. Next, we help students understand how to keep track of their data. Students need to be taught how to do this, whether it's for feedback, looking at progress monitoring, assessments, projects, those types of things. Teachers also meet not only in small groups with students, but they do have one-to-one sessions. It's just important, again, this goes back to that third habit of advocating for yourself. And so these are some of the ways our teachers help too. This is from third grade classroom where the SMART goals are. And then at the secondary level, again, the SMART goals and then daily task planners for students. And then one of the best habits that we like to instill in our students is the growth mindset. We have to do that with our teachers often as well. But it's important that we help students and teachers alike to handle mistakes and problem solve with that yet attitude. So structure helps everyone. We already mentioned the consistency and how they name their teams and assignments and things like that, but really we try to always drive home the importance of that consistency and how it is key. So that is where we start with that at-home structure for online learners, but I always say, and teachers too. It's important to help our learners and our teachers understand about keeping focus, how to gauge and get their interest, and then balance, creating that balance. This is also a place where that parent university holds a role. We really talk about the making space, setting routines, reviewing expectations, how to participate in the learning, listen carefully, ask good questions. And then that balance, because as teachers, we have to make sure that we're balancing accordingly activities that are synchronous and asynchronous, that offer virtual, kinesthetic, and we create choices for kids so that we do keep them engaged and learning and moving forward in their academics. Part of the way that we do that is at the beginning of each quarter, our teachers send out welcome letters. They also post a video about themselves and how to get in touch with them, et cetera, et cetera. If you notice, we do use SMORE a lot. It just is very simple and easy. And then our parents are used to the platform on getting newsletters and information like that. And then here was just a welcome letter too from one of our 5th grade elementary teachers. And then finally, just like in face-to-face classrooms, we know that rules are important. We have to honor that virtual classroom and honor each other in that classroom. Students come up with norms, they all agree upon them, and then they are reminded throughout the live lessons about those norms. This really helps because we use the same environments across the board, K-5, 6, 12, and again, this helps to create that consistency. And then there is no significant learning, again, that occurs without a relationship. It's all about showing that you care. This is just one example of how our teachers check in with students, and they do check in daily. It could be like this check-in sheet. They have exit tickets. It could be part of their assignment where they're checking in. And And sometimes some of these check-ins do lead to counselor referrals, because we know that we do still, even in the virtual world, have to help families that are struggling. So the next section we're going to talk about are values. Values are considered beneficial and important, which means that virtual learning also has to have values to set that standard of teaching and learning in order to continue forward with success. Again, we rely on the distance learning playbook, but we know that touch points are the interactions we have with students, but it's also an extension of the learning tools. So touch points include things like our learning management system, but also those contacts with families, instructional groups, whether they're small groups or one-to-one, even your whole group, how we monitor our students. And then that PopUp Pedagogy, which is a term coined from the distance learning playbook, but really it's ways to help teachers understand how to increase their student engagement. So values help to establish that online learning culture. So we seek and share information. We focus on current learning and future outcomes. We are supporting positive identities and student agency, and we're basing our learning on partnerships between the school and the families, the teacher and the students, etc. We also take time to learn through surveys. We, as we end each quarter, so we did this for quarter one, we did it for quarter two, we surveyed our secondary students. So when we send out surveys, we ask so that we can learn, what did we do well, but where can we improve? And we will be also doing this for our elementary families this spring. So a part of the online learning culture is also ensuring that our teachers are prepared too. And when they're prepared, they are more apt to learn and leap with our students as they drive their own education. So we help our teachers by sending them through professional development that is based on where they are. So they start where they can walk, then they jump, and then they leap. So it just helps them also along their way. I would be remiss if I did not talk about our counselors. Our counselors, just as in the face-to-face environment, are what keeps the system beating. Their heart is in everything we do every day. Our counselors create experiences for our students in new and different ways, but they also are checking in on families, checking for attendance, checking why assignments are late, that type of thing. So here's just some examples. Our teachers, our counselors have hot chocolate talks in the mornings. There's lunch buddies and small groups. And then they connect with parents, and they always are checking on not only student well-being, but family well-being. They also remind the adults about self-care, the importance of us as staff members taking care of ourselves too. Teaching virtually is very hard work. But our teachers will tell you, even though they are working harder now than they ever did in their face-to-face environments, they would not change a thing. In fact, many of our teachers are getting anxious because we haven't told them what next year will look like yet. And they are all just dying to be able to tell us, we want to stay, we want to continue teaching here. So as I was putting this together, I was trying to think about some lessons learned. So I have a little section here about lessons learned to date. These are only a few. There are many more that I could put in here, but we don't have enough time here. Essentially what we learned since we started in, well, the 1st of August, we needed to split the elementary and secondary staff meetings. So we only held those about 3 times at the same time, and now we do separate staff meetings. In our state testing, we need to plan earlier and have a solid plan and backup plan and a backup plan for the backup plan for our state testing. Just as a side note there, as we're getting ready to do our state test, which we call the ISAT, when we added up the number of tests and the number of students, we have to find space and be able to test almost 6,000 students. So we're really working on that right now. We know that for next year, we need to create a cleaner, more streamlined registration and transfer process. We would like to be able to define attendance through enrollment. And this is a much bigger lesson learned than us here at Virtual Schoolhouse. It's something that I know our legislature and policymakers are talking about, but that is something that we really need to be able to look at. We also know at peak times, we need to have one dedicated person that's only there assigned to answer phones. And then, of course, I already showed the welcome and orientation letters, but that was a lesson learned that we needed to have that for our families. And then as I close out today, I just want to show some of the awesome fun that we have, some of our bright spots. Every day, our teachers and staff do amazing things, and it shows in what they put out there for us. So we have a college and career counselor. We have one at middle school and we have one at high school. And this year they did an awesome job for this college application week. They did arrange things for online. We actually do sometimes bring families in, and so we had a few families come in for that. This is one of our preschool teachers doing exploding pumpkins at home. It was so much fun to see the families and the kids and their faces. Our first grade had a pirate day. That was a lot of fun too. We also have an after-school drama club. We have kids that do drama and they do it all virtually, all online. We have a music club that our music teacher started, and our music teacher put together a talent show. So our students submitted through, I think, Flipgrid, their talent, and she put together a running video of our students doing a talent show. It was really awesome. So we're going to do it again in the spring. We have a journalism club, and so we now have a newspaper called The Student Voice, and so that comes out monthly. And then this fall we had a football club, a football fan club. So they just met in the morning virtually and talked about football and fun, and it was pretty cute to see the kids do that. Here's two of our teachers, one showing a student that was proud to show that her teacher rocks t-shirt. And then one of our teachers, she on Fridays, if the kids earn it, they do a virtual field trip through Disney World on Fridays. They just pick one section every Friday and go through Disney World. And so she has a lot of fun doing that with her kids. Here is one of our second grade teachers that does virtual picnic. So all the kids bring their lunch, eat on camera, and just have fun and conversation, just like you would in a lunchroom. And then here's some pictures of teachers set up in the top left-hand corner. We have one of our 8th grade history teachers teaches using Minecraft. And so that's his classroom right there, set up in Minecraft. And our second grade team wrote to Donor Choose, and so that's our second graders happily showing off some of their Donor Choose materials. Whoops. So as I close out today, 5 minutes early, I know I hurried. I just want you to think about creating engaging learning experiences, and remember your why, the good habits, a solid structure, and your values. So I do not know if there are time for questions, but I will turn to Leilani and others to see if there are.
Okay, I'm checking for questions. Are there any comments from your cohort there?
Oh, my assistant principal is
Amanda.
with me. Rachel, do you have to add? No. No, she's good, she said.
Good. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm looking for comments. I don't see anybody asking them. So I'm going to be the teacher for a moment here and say, hey, kids, get involved. Raise your hand. Come on. I feel like if I could call on all of them, that would be awesome. But these are adults, right? So it's like, I don't want to embarrass anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to be like, hey, you better, what's happening with you? Demerit for the day for not, getting involved. I'd love to do that, but these are adults, like I said. So this was awesome. And I think one of my takeaways, Sherawn, is really the structure. Having structure is what we had when everybody was together. You got to be there by a certain time, or, you got to show up. And it's funny because when we first started after the pandemic, Doug and I were in Philadelphia. We had flown in there for our event in Philadelphia. And as we were in the air, our staff were telling us that they were seeing cascading loss in attendance. Oh. So we just called it off, turned around, got on a plane the next day and came home. And then it seems like a lot of the districts that we had grown to know and love, like yours, calling us, what do we do? Because everybody was closing down. And our first thing was, you got to roll call everybody. You got to at least get people together virtually, right? So, that's really number one, in feeling like you're a part of something. And even yesterday when I talked about student motivation, there are those affiliation oriented kids who don't perform at all unless they feel like they are a part of something. So here's what I'm struggling with, and I want to ask you about this. What I struggle with is the fact that you cannot have 8, 9, 10-year-olds, 7-year-olds on a Zoom all day. Doesn't work. So the structure change is here. That togetherness, like you're showing, fantastic. But you can't do it all day. So how are you sort of thinking through structure change? Like togetherness is this, 20 minutes. And then all the asynchronousness is this, right? Like that's the real big question all across America today. Is like, when we move to digital, and we're going to continue to be digital for a lot of kids because they don't want to come back, right? This is just going to go on for 2021. So what are your thoughts?
Well, especially at the elementary level, that is more important than anything. And to be honest with you, again, that was some lessons learned. We started one way. Some teachers then came to me and said, this isn't working. Can we adjust? And so we've actually adjusted by grade level what that looks like. So for example, our second grade team meets live with everyone, right? First thing off in the morning. They do their morning meetings. They set them up for the day. And then the kids are broken up into small groups. So if you're in this group, you'll go with this teacher. If you're in this group, you go with that teacher and then this teacher. And then they do one-to-one. And then if there's offline, if they're not meeting with the whole group or a small group, then they are expected to be in Seesaw doing things, in Edgenuity, Pathblazer doing items, iReady, iStation, etc. And the teachers monitor. They have we have spreadsheets on, data. There's a spreadsheet on data dips where we know this is where the kids are. This is, they're coming up, they're coming down, what that looks like. And then our third grade team has done things a little bit differently too. They start with whole group in the morning. And then when it comes to math, one of the teacher does all of the math lessons for the week. And so she records herself and they post that. One does all the ELA, one does all the science. And then they're able to, again, get kids into the applications, but then pull small groups and things like that. So it just varies across the board. And our secondary teachers do the same thing.
Okay, wait a second. I just want to understand what you just talked about with the math teacher pre-recording the lessons. So essentially, they take what would have been synchronous and make it asynchronous ingestion. And then the synchronous time is the go watch this video, do this. How are you doing? Checking on you personally. How, blah, 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 blah. Okay, good. Now disperse, go do your stuff, and then synchronize again later.
Yes.
Cool.
Yep. And then they have closing meetings.
That's the model we see emerging. Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then our secondary families do something, or teachers do something very similar where they have live lessons, especially at the beginning of the week. And then they break it down into their office hours. Kids can come in or they invite students in. And then they have small groups and then they have other intervention groups that they have put together. And then at the secondary level as well, I didn't mention that in the presentation, but we do have, again, this is lesson learned. We won't call it this next year. We're trying to think of something different, but we have like a credit recovery program. We have someone who oversees that. So if students didn't do well live or they weren't doing well with the big group of students in geography or algebra, then they come in and we have credit recovery teachers who have smaller groups and focus just on those kids to get them through.
What we're hoping is happening all across the nation is a refinement of a restructure of use of time and space. And you're living this, banging back and forth, remodeling, fascinating story.
Yeah. Well,
I'd love to hear more of the backstory of like what happened. Teacher came into my office crying. This was going on. Blah 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 blah. I mean, it's so funny because we're on all these conferences, these virtual events, all with people all across the country, and most educators, administrators are so professional, teachers so professional. But the truth is, spit out every once in a while. Some superintendent says, "Well, there are people in my office crying. Wasn't expecting that." It was like a moment.
Yeah. Well, I would be lying if I didn't say that Rachel's laughing over here because she and I joke, but the first couple of weeks of school, we probably each went through 2 boxes of Kleenex every day, the first 2 weeks, just because of like, oh, what did we do? How did, but now
let's talk about social emotional. Like it's really emotional. It's just, this is a moment.
Can I mention one other thing really quick? Cause I know time is, but, this model has worked so well for the flexibility for our families. We actually have students that have gone to Egypt and they still connect and do their online learning. We had a teacher that went to Scotland over Christmas and ended up getting stuck because of COVID. So she still taught from there. We have students in Alaska. We have students in Iraq. We have students in Afghanistan. So Oregon, I think we even had somebody in the Carolinas. So it works. It does great. Kids can stay connected to their friends here, but then do what their family needs them to do.
This is awesome. Well, I'm going to have to move on now, but I'm going to make sure I stay connected with you because I want to go deeper into the hybrid logistics model that's emerging with you, particularly on a separate side note. But, thank you. And your lurker behind the scenes there. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Young children spend 75% of their school day involved in listening activities and need to receive 90 to 100% of information via the spoken word to understand the full meaning. But there are numerous barriers standing in the way of that critical intelligibility, and unfortunately, they can't yet fill in the blanks when things are missed. In students' environments, distance, directionality, and ambient noise all play a role. Speech gets quieter over distance, dropping in volume significantly as it makes its way toward the back of the room. Further, when teachers face away from their students, the sound level can be cut in half. Distracting ambient noise can also drown out speech, leaving students and teachers straining to effectively communicate. And simply increasing the volume of speech itself is often not enough. As loudness increases and teachers try to reach the entire room, students might be able to hear what's being said, but they may still struggle to understand it. For example, clarity is critical to the understanding of soft consonants, such as p, t, k, s, and more. The recent COVID-19 pandemic has added additional challenges to the listening environment, such as greater distance between students and teachers, masks and other facial coverings, and protective barriers on desks. With instructional audio, you can overcome these challenges. By leveraging a microphone with either a portable or installed speaker solution, you can ensure the teacher's voice achieves even coverage, regardless of distance, directionality, and ambient noise. And with an easy, tap-to-talk microphone, student voices are clearly heard by both their teachers and peers. Instructional audio provides a clear way to hear the human voice and a pathway to elevating the learning and understanding of students in the modern classroom. To learn more, contact Lightspeed today.